Welcome to GRE Snacks, snackable episodes about the GRE and graduate school admissions. I'm Tyler, the founder of Achievable, and we have an affordable GRE course that includes everything you need to ace your GRE exam. A full textbook, videos on key topics, tons of GRE questions backed by our memory enhancing algorithm, a built in study planner, machine learning essay grader, and full length practice exams. You can try it out for free by going to achievable.me, and if you like it, use the code podcast to get 10% off at checkout. Now, let's get started. Today, we have some really special guests, Dave and Jay from ETS, and I would love if you guys could introduce yourself. Maybe we'll say starting with Dave.
Sure. Uh, I'm very happy to be on the podcast today. My name is Dave Escoffery, and I am a director in the graduate and professional education area at ETS. And what that means is that I manage all of the people who write the content, the test questions for the GRE. And for a few other programs. But I started at ETS in 2006, working on the analytical writing section of the GRE, and I've worked on that section and worked with the people who create the questions for the GRE for the last almost 19 years. And Jay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi there, Jay Bryant here. About a little more than 20 years back, I was where many of you are now, looking to take my admissions test to go in for business school. So got through all that, went to business school, I wound up at Thunderbird School of Global Management, which is part of Arizona State University. When I graduated, one of my faculty members, I had been a teacher prior. I taught high school Spanish, and he asked me to come work with him to launch a new program, which I did, which was one of the first online MBA programs out there. So that's where I started and launched my career into admissions. I wound up for 10 years working at Thunderbird itself, with my final title being a long one here, Associate Vice President of Admissions, Recruiting, Financial Aid, International Student Office, and Student Affairs. So I had.
I think that might be the longest title I've seen in a long time.
I think so. I don't think it even fit in the LinkedIn box to put that on. So I've had my experience a little bit of everywhere within the programs, but primarily recruiting and admissions is where my heart is. I left there, moved to the University of California in San Diego, the Rady School of Management, and led their recruiting and admissions office for a number of years. And I was an advisor to ETS. Especially during the time that the GRE was becoming more and more accepted in MBA programs. When I applied, you had to take the GMAT. But that has evolved a great deal. That started in 2010. So I got both that through at both schools I worked at. So I'm very familiar with the test and with ETS and with the admissions process. So that's why I decided to come join the team at ETS. So what I do here is I work with directly, mostly with admissions, associate deans, things like that, making sure that they have everything they need and the knowledge they need to be using our assessments here at ETS. So I am constantly working with admissions folks. That's who I talk with all day. That's the mindset I'm in, and that's what I'll be able to speak to today.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And today, we're going to be talking primarily about basically the writing section, kind of mostly of the GRE, but also a little bit about the GMAT, as there are rumors that the GMAT might remove it. And I mean, Dave, given that you started on this in your career, 19 years ago, I feel like this holds a special place in your heart. I guess maybe the starting point that I'd like to start with here is kind of like why is the writing portion being talked about in sort of the graduate and MBA admissions world right now? And then, the kind of origin story of it, right? Like why was it added to these exams in the first place?
Right. So I think the writing section offers something that is that you can't get in the multiple choice sections, right? We're able
Mhm.
to measure and assess skills that are really critical to business schools, and Jay can talk to that probably more than I can. My background, I was a professor of theater history before I started at ETS. But obviously in a humanities field, you understand writing is important. But what we've learned from talking to admissions professionals, to talking to professors, deans, as we've developed these assessments, is that every discipline thinks that writing is important, right?
Mhm.
Even in the STEM disciplines, even in math, you need to be able to communicate. And that skill just becomes more and more important today. And,
Mhm.
we'll probably get into this more, but at this point, having a piece of authentic writing that we know is not generated by AI can be
Right.
really valuable for an admissions decision. If you want to know if someone can communicate clearly in writing, and that they can actually produce that piece of writing themselves, an analytical writing section on a test like this is really useful.
Right. Yeah, and I think also, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned AI because that was going to be one of the things I talked about. Is like, let's call it 10 years ago. I live in San Francisco, right? So everybody and their mother was having their kids learn how to code. And now we've gone from, I think it was like 2021, there were 220,000 entry level coding jobs. And now there are 60,000, right? So a huge crash in entry level coding jobs because AI is supposedly going to do more of the work. And so you start to get to this point where it's like, what's actually a defensible skill in the future? And to me, I think talking to people is one of the most important ones. And yes, AI can do a lot of writing for you, but if you read enough of it like I do, it's pretty easy to tell, right? Like we get, people applying to the company, whatever. You can tell an AI written cover letter versus not, right? You can, and in a business email, certainly, you're not letting AI write those emails for you most of the time, especially the critical ones.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I agree. It's a really important skill. Um, and with the admission side of things, Jay, I mean, when you were at Thunderbird and UC San Diego, which by the way, my wife is an alumnus for undergrad. Pretty cool, small world. Um, what do you feel like the writing portion gave you when you read it or when you saw that score in addition to the other scores in the admissions process?
Sure. Quite a bit. And I'm going to say, by the way, writing super super important in business school world, especially in the MBA world. And I'm going to back up. I said I taught high school before, and I
Mhm.
taught high school Spanish. If you could
Mhm.
see me, you could see I am not of Latin origin whatsoever. I
Right.
learned on my own, well, through school and everything like that, and I wound up teaching AP Spanish. Why is that important? I taught AP Spanish, which is one of the ETS tests that we've worked with over the years. Um, and in that, I would have to teach my students, there's the section on reading to make sure you understand it, but language production is really important. It does no good if you understand
Mhm.
everything, can't say anything back. So that was the speaking
Mhm.
and the writing sections, and we spent a lot of work on that. And to me, ultimately, if you say that you speak Spanish, you can write Spanish, production is super important. So the writing is one of the two forms of production. There's no speaking section of the GRE at this point. I don't think we're talking
Mhm.
about that anytime soon. On the
No,
TOEFL,
no.
there is.
It might be a part of the IELTS at some point, but who
Yeah,
knows?
on IELTS and TOEFL, which we
TOEFL,
work with here at ETS.
Oh, I got that wrong. Oh no.
Oh no,
Yes,
no,
TOEFL.
we'll forgive you. We're on the GRE side, so we're all good. But yeah, the TOEFL does have that. So this is a point at which it is the only part of the GRE which the applicant is producing something. By the way, on the GMAT, it is not a rumor they are taking the writing off. It's gone. It is gone today. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Got
so
it. Yeah.
so there is absolutely no production of a student on the GMAT. and you say, well, they write their essays and whatnot for their application. I'm going to speak just very frankly here, if I can. When I applied more
Hmm.
than 20 years ago, I had 3 or 4 friends that I respected, that I thought were pretty
Mm-hmm.
smart, read my essay, edit my essay. What I submitted then was not all my own work. So
Hmm.
back then, taking the GMAT with the writing section, uh, that was my own work. Now, as an admissions person, did I read every essay from the GRE test we have the access to? The
Hmm.
answer is no. Why? Because as an admissions person, I put my faith in ETS and know they have brilliant people like Dave and the people that work with him that grade these, that write these questions very specifically to allow the applicant to show where they are on that spectrum. And usually,
Hmm.
now, did I read some? Yes. Do I know schools that read them all? Yes, I do. I'm not going to tell you who, but I do know some schools I work with do. Um,
Well, and
but
certainly you can always dig in, right? Like if you're ever kind of like, oh, I don't know, this guy got a 4.5, but he seems pretty good. You can just go read it.
right, right, right.
Correct.
Um, so, but we kind of, as long as they were scoring on the higher end of things, and the rest of their application all felt good, we're like, okay, ETS has checked their writing for us. We don't need to do that. That's why
Hmm.
when GMAT announced, oh, we're going to remove the writing section, I just just about fell out of my chair. I'm like, well, who's checking their writing then? Because and
Right.
Chat GPT, all of those AI things, that's why I referred back to 20 whatever years ago when I was applying. It wasn't your authentic work in those essays. Some people may be, but as an
Mhm.
admissions director, I knew you're getting help somewhere from somebody.
Well, right. Yeah, no, I mean that's such a like that's actually the point I wanted to come back to is pretty much every essay that you're writing for your business school application or even any normal graduate school application, you're having somebody else read it, right? And a lot of people are having expensive consultants read it who that's their living, right? And so the only time you get authentic, writing is in this test because there's no help.
Yeah, and
Right.
if I may continue on that admissions part a little bit, the job of an
Yeah.
admissions person especially for an MBA program, and I've heard this from a lot of companies that hire afterwards. We're that first line of interviewing for your career, is getting into your
Mm,
MBA program. And
right.
there's so many things within the program, whether it be, writing up case studies, which is always a big thing in business school. Uh, you're writing things to persuade people, influence people. You got to have good writing skills there. Just a mere respect. I will tell you, I text all the time. I use that all the time. And when I get a text message and they use there and there wrong, something happens to me. I'm like, ooh, yeah, don't they know that's the wrong version of there?
Right.
And that
Like
may
your
be
little,
such a
you
small
judge them a
thing,
teeny
but
bit.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of people in this podcast probably know what I'm talking about. And those are the sort
Hmm.
of things, but maybe at a higher level of writing. When you're writing an email and it's a professional email, whether it's to an alum that's going to help you get a job, or you're writing to a corporate recruiter or somebody, you need to be writing at this level that makes sense, that you've got control of it, you're using the right spelling, the right choice of words, that you sound smart, you sound intellectual, that they want to have you working at their company and pay you good money. So
Right.
so
Yeah, it's
important.
super important. I mean, like when I do my hiring, I mean, I wouldn't like disqualify someone over using the wrong form of their, but like you certainly notice it. And then also, I've had people where their resume has said extremely good attention to detail, and then their formatting screwed up, and I'm just like, right? Like it's the little things
Yeah.
that that give you some insight into kind of what's really behind the curtain, right? And so that's all very important. I agree.
I think to add one thing, Tyler, to what you said, um, there's also a fairness and equity piece to this,
Mm,
right? If everything that if the only examples of your writing that admissions officers are seeing are things that you could pay someone lots of money to help you create,
mhm.
then it's unfairly biased towards people who can afford to spend that money, right? So
Right.
having an authentic piece of writing as part of this process is it's an equity piece, right?
Mhm.
There you can't buy your essay that you write during the during the GRE.
Right. And it's also it's not like completely it's not locked in a black box how to get a good score on the GRE AWA, right? Like
Correct.
it's relatively accessible, and I believe that most people that can write at a graduate school level or feel that they can definitely execute the assignment, right?
Correct. And we offer a lot of test prep assistance already.
Hmm.
Um, and in fact, any single prompt that you might find on the GRE is pre-published, so people can
Hmm.
practice with the actual prompts that they're going to see on the test. So,
Right.
I think we do a lot to try to make the test as equitable as possible, while still
Hmm.
giving people a broad opportunity to demonstrate their skills. Right? There's no one
Right.
single way to craft your response.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that that is a really good point. I'm glad you brought up. And, it kind of ties, I don't want to derail this conversation too much, but it kind of ties back to like the test optional thing, where it turns out that like with grade inflation and everything else, like standardized tests are actually really helpful. And you've got all these undergrad programs are going back, right? And so as much as yes, you can always pay for your tutor, you can always pay for more resources, it still is sort of a level playing field, and certainly more so than comparing apples to oranges when it comes to like high schools or colleges. People going to in the college experience, going to a state school versus going to a private university, right? Or a community college versus a state school, even very different experiences and very different levels of training, right, for the next step. I'm curious now. I'd like to shift gears a little bit and talk sort of about your thoughts on the writing section going forward. Because what I've gathered so far is that y'all know that GMAC has removed writing from the GMAT and feel like, I'm not going to speak for you, but certainly you guys were not like, that's a great idea. We should do that too. It was a little bit more, so I'm curious, kind of, for ETS, like, what do you guys feel is the value of the writing section in the GRE, and what do you feel like is kind of the future of it?
Well, I can start with that, and Jay, you can
Hmm.
add on. I think like we said, the writing section. I personally feel, and I think ETS, I think shares this. This is a critical skill, right? That's important no matter what field you're getting into, and and so and I guess I'll mention here that it's not just a writing section, right? It's an analytical writing section.
Hmm.
So we're assessing not just your ability to string together a sentence and to have subject verb agreement and things like that, but this is also looking at reasoning and your ability to
Hmm.
construct an argument and to choose reasons and examples that support the position that you're trying to convince us of. And are your examples compelling? Are your reasons logically persuasive? All of this is part of the measure, and we feel like this is really a fundamental skill. And so, in my mind, it just becomes even more fundamental, like we said, with the rise of AI, with
Hmm.
other ways that that schools traditionally have seen examples of people's writing uh, maybe being a little more questionable or a little bit less quote unquote authentic.
Mhm.
So to me, the writing section is more important than ever. And
Yeah.
so on the admission side, I think some people feel that way as well.
They most certainly do. Yeah, right after the announcement was made last year, we have an advisory group of admissions folks from business schools that we meet with regularly, and I think they were all also a bit shocked. And the same,
Mhm.
my initial reaction of, well, who's checking the writing then? Because we go back to that essay you submit.
Mhm.
There's no test security around that to make sure that was written by the applicant. Um, so
Totally. Yeah,
I
you also have ghostwriters. I didn't even think about that.
yeah. And man, I wish I had been able to afford one of these expensive consultants to read for me or help me
Yeah.
write way back when. But no, I just had my old college buddies. Um, but but you're seeing some schools now. It's already been announced. Harvard, MIT are looking to be admitted, and they're all doing it in different ways. They're kind of right in the middle of how they're setting it up right now. For Harvard, it is if you get to the interview phase, which I don't know the exact numbers, but let's say they have 10,000 applicants, they may interview only 1,000. So this may
Right.
be, not everyone's going to have to take the writing section, but if you are going to be admitted and you get to that interview phase, you are going to have to write an additional test that GMAT, the same organization, is putting out, where they are going to have a writing test. Now,
Oh, okay.
but
Interesting.
you don't, you can apply to Harvard without it. You just can't be admitted to Harvard without it. It's kind of where I'm going. At some point, they're going to say, "Hey, we'd like to interview you. So set up your interview. Oh, and go take the writing test." So you're going to have to do both. And I'm sure MIT and others will be something similar. If not at the first point of application, by the time you're admitted. And I'll tell you, I've been in this industry long enough to know when Harvard and MIT do something, everyone listens. Now, it doesn't mean they want
Yep.
to act exactly the same way and do exact same things, but if they're saying, Harvard's having them take an additional writing test, how are our students doing in writing? We should probably be checking that before they get here. Um,
Well, and it just shows you, like what Dave was saying too, right? How much value there is placed on it to the point where GMAT took the writing portion out and they're like, well, we still need writing. And now we're going to do it in this like weird, like two-step way. Are these schools, if you apply with a GRE with a writing score, are you still going to have to take this other writing test later, or
nope.
they're going to waive it? Okay,
It's a
that's
one and
great.
done sort of situation where you take the GRE, you got the writing section, and two things about that. When you combine those, it's
Hmm.
going the GRE route is significantly shorter and
Right.
significantly less expensive, because in this case you have to pay for both the GMAT and the writing test as well separately.
Right. Well, and I bet that you probably have to do this right. I mean, I don't know. I shouldn't speculate, but if you take the GMAC writing MBA test, I don't know what it's called. If you can only submit that once and then you have to do it again and pay again, that would suddenly start to get a lot more expensive. I don't know if that's how they do it. Maybe they let you transition it across all your applications. I would have to go look that up, but certainly, yeah, it's a lot more complicated than just the original. Like, take the writing portion in the GRE, then you're good to go.
Yeah, you could take the GRE,
Um,
including the writing section, in just a little under 2 hours.
right, yeah, and that's actually a great segue to the next thing I wanted to talk about too. Which, first off, I thought that was a great move. Right, like with your adaptive technology, you can afford to do that and still make really good, accurate assessments. I'm curious. You had, as part of that, it made sense that to get under 2 hours total, one of the 30-minute essays was going to have to be removed. And I'm curious, just you removed analyze an argument versus the issue essay. And I'm curious how you came to that decision and then sort of what you feel like the issue essay can do.
Right. So, like with everything we tend to do at ETS, we don't do things kind of on a whim or in a vacuum, right? We're always talking
Oh, yeah.
to uh, committees of deans and admissions professionals and directors of graduate study and different programs. So we reached out to different programs and schools, in particular ones that are heavy GRE users, and we
Hmm.
asked them which of the two writing prompts are most valuable to you.
Hmm.
And many of them said we like them both about equally, and the ones who had a preference said they prefer the issue section.
Hmm.
So, and we thought about it, and we said, well, with the issue section, like I said, you're being asked to construct an argument, right? You're being asked to take a position and support that position with relevant examples or reasons, and explain your reasoning, support your position, develop your argument. So we decided, because those schools had told us that was what they valued more, this is a critical skill no matter which kind of graduate program you're going into. Whether you're going to
Hmm.
law school, whether you're going to business school, whether you're going to be a physicist or hey, a theater historian, because theater historians are cool. Right, no
Yeah.
matter
And
which
folk funk players. Yeah.
no matter which kind of program you're going into, you're going to need to have that skill. So that was sort of the thinking behind, keeping the issue section.
Yeah, and if I may add there, when you're going into business school, I mentioned earlier case studies. It's almost
Hmm.
it's what you're doing. You're reading the case, and then you are literally going to be writing about what issues are there. What do I see good, the bad? What could they do to fix it? I mean, cases are all a bit different, but that concept is there. It's
Right.
very much something that you're going to be doing in your actual program.
Yeah, and I agree also with Dave that I think it's a little bit more broadly, like if you had to pick one, right, the issue is more broadly applicable to things outside of MBA programs as well, but it's also the most applicable to MBA programs. So that makes a lot of sense. Well, so then it sounds like the AWA, Analytical Writing Assessment, sorry for the listeners, it sounds like that's here to stay. Is that correct? At least for the time being. Obviously, things can change in the future, but.
For the time being, yeah, we think it's a valuable addition to the GRE, and maybe just becoming more so as we
Mhm.
move forward.
Right. Yeah, suddenly it's the differentiator. And I'm curious then, I guess just sort of my sort of typical ending question here is there anything that you guys want to share that you feel like I didn't ask you about or that maybe you were looking to add here or any kind of concluding thoughts on this topic?
Well, I'll go ahead and throw something in from the admissions side. This is a chance to really put your best foot forward. Take the writing section seriously. If you are taking the GRE and take the writing section, when I would see a really low score from a native English speaker, I knew there was something going on here. And we
Hmm.
on admissions people, we're looking at about 50 different things on every application. But that's one that
Right.
really stands out to me, and I know to many of my colleagues in the industry, that when you see that sort of, wait a minute, they did so well on quantitative, they did so well on the verbal, they just didn't take this serious. Is that how they're going to treat our program? Um,
Right.
it all means so much. So put your best foot forward, and it's not about writing the great new world essay. You're not about to be Shakespeare. You just need to be
Yeah.
organized, use the language that you can control, and prove that, and that makes a big impression on the admissions end.
Yeah, and execution, right? Like I at least when we talk to people about the GRE essay portion with our customers, we say it's all about executing well, right? Which is obviously very important for MBA programs.
Right. Yeah, and I guess what I would leave people with is the just the value of practice.
Hmm.
Um, you know, there's there is somewhat of an art to writing a timed 30-minute essay response, and it is something that you can practice, whether it's
Hmm.
through a program like yours, Tyler, or just getting on the gre.org website and
Yep.
pulling up all of the prompts, and maybe practice one or two without giving yourself a time limit.
Hmm.
Think through, okay, how would I respond to this, and what examples could I use, what position am I going to take on this issue. We get a lot of people who ask us, oh, do I have to agree with the issue or do I have to disagree with it? And we always tell people there is no right and no wrong way to approach these issue questions. You can agree
Hmm.
with it, you could disagree with it, you could be somewhere in between. Well, in certain cases, yes, but in other cases, no, right? What matters is how you support whichever position that you take. So think
Right.
about what position would I want to take and how would I support that? And maybe write some without any time limit and then practice with some time limits. And it's just, one of the keys to taking a standardized test is making sure you're going to feel comfortable on test day.
Right.
And so that you know what you're going to expect when you walk into that room, whether it's your bedroom because you're taking it at home or a test center, right? If you know what to expect and you feel comfortable, then you can really show what you know.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. This has been GRE Snacks, hosted by Tyler from Achievable, with Dave Escoffery and Jay Bryant from ETS, the makers of the GRE. And Achievable has an online GRE course that you can try for free at achievable.me. And be sure to use that code podcast to get 10% off if you like it.